Hi, my name is Gwen Mazza and welcome to The Art of Transition. Today my guest is Pamela Morris and we're going to be speaking on the topic of divorce. And the title of our show today is Moving Through Divorce. Stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back to The Art of Transition. Again, our guest is Pamela Morris. Thank you, Pam, for joining me.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. I asked Pam to join us because, as most of you know, more than 50% of the couples who do get married end up in divorce. First-time marriages end up in divorce. And although that this is nothing new or not a new topic, it is a topic that continues to move through in our cultures. It's a topic that has a lot of sensitivity to it. It's a topic that has much sadness to it. And is a topic that really touches many of our hearts. Most of us know folks who have either gone through a divorce or many of us are divorced. And today Pam was willing to sit and share some of her journey with us and with this audience so that as you move or you know of others who go through this process, you may have a little bit more insight and maybe even more compassion as we go through these kinds of life processes. So thank you again, Pam.
You're welcome.
How long were you married originally?
It would have been 27 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And can you tell me how you met your husband? And your husband's name was Mike?
Yes. I met Mike. I was in my late 20s, actually 26 or 7. And we dated for 3 or 4 years before we actually got married. We were 30 when we got married, so both of us thought that, yes, we'd found the right person. We met at a cabin party of a mutual friend.
And so you were married, and the church, and all of those beautiful, exciting moments, and the wishes and the dreams and the hope.
The promises and the vows.
The promises and the vows. So tell me a little bit about the journey as you and Mike went through that
27 years.
Yeah, 27 years together.
Well, at the age of 30, I thought that I knew exactly what I wanted. I had my life planned out. I was ready for a solid marriage. I was ready for a family. We had our daughter when I was 33, and it was very good. We had a good life together. I always felt there was a little bit of lack of communication, but I thought that's not a big deal. I can overcome that. But as time passed, that lack of communication did make an impact in our relationship, and I felt like I was the only one that was trying to communicate or to talk about what our future was going to be.
I actually had the honor of knowing Mike as well. So I know both of you as a married couple, and now I know you as a couple who are no longer married. And this is not about bad and good. This is about two really great people who came to a point in their life that things needed to change. And I know that it was challenging at different points of the marriage. And yes, there were good points, and then there were challenging moments. When did you and Mike really start to discover that this was a time most likely that the marriage would need to come to a close?
Probably almost 18 years probably into the relationship, I realized that Mike didn't have the same values in the marriage that I did. The infidelity was a turning point. We went to counseling, we went to therapy. He indicated that he would change, that it would be a different kind of relationship. And it did seem to change for a while, but it didn't really change. I didn't realize that he wasn't as invested in the marriage as I was. Our daughter left for college, and that...
And your daughter's name is
Amy.
Yes,
she's
beautiful.
The best part of us. She's a wonderful girl. When she left, that opened up opportunities for Mike and I to do things together. Empty nest syndrome, but it was a good one. But it didn't happen that way. He was more involved in the activities that he wanted to do. As a firefighter, he was away a lot of nights working. So when he was home, there were things that he wanted to do that I was not a part of. So it was definitely an eye-opener. And I think that I felt that I wasn't enough. And that was very difficult for me. Either I wasn't young enough or thin enough or not blonde enough or my hair not long enough. And it took me a while to realize that I could look in the mirror and know that I was enough. I was enough, but it wasn't enough for him. So when he actually came out and said, I don't know if I love you, that was the closing of the first door. And that's actually when he left. I said, then you need to go. And he said, all right. So that was the door closing, the first door anyway.
So there were a few doors that closed along the way.
Yes, steps.
So the divorce and the moving through divorce, like transitions, has steps and processes and pieces to it. And what I would like to say for our audience is no two divorces ever go the same. There is no template. Every person's and every individual's life is unique. There are some things along the way that we can borrow from one another to assist in the process. There's not going to be any smooth process. It's just a lot of pain, a lot of sadness, a lot of dreams are different than what we had hoped, as in many other life situations. So that was one door.
There was some bitterness in there too, I have to admit. That it took me a while to get over that.
Pretty natural. I think most everyone goes through a moment or so, or big moments of bitterness.
Those stages of him not being able to say that he loved me, because I actually thought throughout our marriage that at the end of the day, he loved me. And if he loved me enough, that we could get through anything. But when he couldn't say that he loved me, it was the first step of the end. Filing for separation, living apart for a year, and I was the one who actually got the proceedings going for divorce.
Even
those
though
are each stages.
You were not the one that actually initiated the divorce, or you were then?
I did.
So you did. When
I wanted that
yes.
final step.
So you wanted the final step of closing.
I had great friends. That was what was the best part of it for me in going through those stages. Two very good friends and two very different women. One, Patty, who after a long day at work, would call me and say, come on, meet me out for a drink, or let's go have dinner or a hors d'oeuvre somewhere. Got me to join a fitness club and encouraged me in that direction. She knows a lot of people in the area. Made sure that I felt loved and cared about. She was such a rock for me. Another friend, Sharon, had been through a similar situation, a relationship ending after 25 years. And she signed me up for a couple of internet dating services and pushed me out the door for speed dating. And
what was that really like for you? I know.
The speed dating? Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying.
Yes. At my age, to go into a bar and, or I think it's a restaurant actually, and get a number and sit at these little tables. But after the first few, I was so nervous. I actually practiced, questions ahead of time. What am I going to say? What do I say to these people in 4 minutes or 5 minutes? But I actually met some interesting people. It was very different after being with one person for 30 years. The dating plus the marriage. It was not easy to get out and do that. But again, Patty in her way, and Sharon, literally, she actually met her current husband through Singles Golf Club.
Oh, did she?
So, and she did a lot of counseling and therapy, and that was what worked for her. So both of them in different ways were such good listeners and so encouraging and so positive. I think that having friends as a support group for me was the most important thing.
What about the quiet moments? The moments when the house is all of a sudden silent?
I did a lot of yelling at the television set.
You did, okay.
I did. Friday night or Saturday night, I'd be sitting there by myself, and the romantic commercials would come on, and I'd talk to the TV and say, no, it's not going to happen that way. No, no, that's not real life. Or the, yeah, just, that was that edge of bitterness. That it's not fair. Why did it have to happen to me? I did everything right. I did everything I was supposed to do, and it still didn't work.
Sometimes that does happen. It does happen. And again, because having known and knowing both of you, it's not a right or wrong or good or bad. It's just really painful. How was it for your family? Because I know that when I went through my divorce, the hardest, one of the most painful pieces was understanding that this choice had an impact on others. And it literally brought me to my knees to think about my choices impacting the ones I love so. Talk to us a little bit about the families and the friends.
I am actually still in touch with Mike's family. They're good people. They're very supportive. They wanted to make sure that I knew I was still part of their family, whether or not Mike was involved in my life, that it was important to them that I still be part of that. And I come from a very small family. And when I married Mike, he was the oldest of five children. And I got this big family and all this excitement when I married him. And I didn't want to lose that, and I didn't. And they made sure that I knew that. It was very gratifying.
And for your daughter, what was the transition like, and what was it as a mom like watching her go through that transition?
I tried very hard to make sure that it was as smooth as possible for Amy. My relationship with Mike was my relationship.
And that is really very true.
And it should not impact the relationship between Mike and Amy. And they still get along just fine. You know, she's very supportive of me. She's my #1 fan. And I think it was hard for her because I don't think any children ever want to see their parents unhappy. And I think she knew that, well, I know that she knew I was unhappy and just wanted me to do whatever it took to bring myself to the point that I could enjoy being myself again.
So you have become yourself again.
I have.
And what does that look like for you today? What does that mean when you say myself again?
I feel good about myself. I know that I am enough. I retired from teaching. I still coach. I enjoy very much that contact with the kids. I am social. I do things with friends. I've met some wonderful people. And I realized that the difficulties that Mike and I had in our relationship were a combined. It's not all his fault, which I thought immediately. I enabled some behaviors, but I like myself. I like myself. I like my life. A huge transition for me was buying him out of the house. I never thought at my age I would have a 30-year mortgage, but the house is mine. I literally purged the house of all things Mike and started over. And I could stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning and paint my bathroom, or I could rearrange the furniture and bring all my books into the living room. I could actually have that house the way I wanted it.
Was that a cleansing, more of that cleansing kind of experience for you, do you think? Because you were talking purging, and sounds like a real cleansing. And was it also and I know that it's about cleansing, quote unquote, Mike. It really is about that relationship, because Mike's still in your life. I mean, truthfully, I mean, when we have kids, the former spouse will always be in our life, and it's really a conscious choice on how we want to be with them.
Well, I got custody of the cat.
Oh, you did.
So actually, Mike has taken the cat. If I've gone off on a trip for a week, which I certainly can do at any time, he has taken the cat, Buzzy, for a week or 4 or 5 days. So actually, we're probably better friends now because I have absolutely no expectations of him whatsoever.
The interesting piece that I've experienced as I went through my divorce, as some of my friends have, as I've watched and counseled folks through divorce many times, is this myth that you cannot have a doable relationship at the back end of that. And that's really quite painful. It's painful, I think, for the individuals who go through the divorce, since you've been in relationship for so many years, as well as the children. The children really need us to figure out how to get our acts together, to be honest with you. And I know that that sounds really pretty tough and pretty straight to the point, and yet it's about being better human beings outside, now that the marriage is over, better than we could have possibly been maybe inside the marriage. What are your thoughts around that?
I think it probably would have been easy to turn Amy against her father. And that's not something I ever wanted to do. I've seen that happen in other families, and when a divorce is acrimonious, and it's terrible on the children, no matter what age they are, whether they're 5 or 10 or 25.
That's right.
It's very difficult, and children are still children at heart when it comes to their parents. Mike and Amy have that relationship, but I have also stepped back. My role was always the peacemaker, the person that made sure there were connections between family members, and that's not my job anymore. So the relationship that Amy and Mike have will be on them. So.
Other kind of things that you found helpful as you went through the transformation, the transition from being a married woman to a single woman again. What was even that thought like about having been married? I mean, I understand that piece of you're married, then all of a sudden you're single. What was that like for you?
I think it would have been a lot harder had I not still been working part-time.
Okay.
Keeping very busy. When I joined the health club, I took a lot of different kinds of classes, took some Zumba, some dance classes, and just kept myself very busy in renovating the house. I spent weeks, prepping and painting or hauling stuff out of the basement, out of the attic. Keeping busy, keeping in touch with my friends, those things were what were important to me. So it was like those quiet nights you talked about. Those are the times that when you have to sit and think that I just turn the channel. Then if it was a romantic show, I just, go to some horror movie or Arnold Schwarzenegger action flick to take my mind off the romantic part.
Yeah.
So it was staying busy. I thought about it, but realized that dwelling on it was counterproductive to feeling better.
Other doors. What were other notable doors that you'd like us to know about that you realized?
Initiating the divorce proceedings, when the divorce became final, and when I made my first mortgage payment.
Okay, so those are 3 doors.
Those things made me realize that I still had that part of my life, and that I was enjoying life. It's because I took it back. I took it back myself. I made that decision to do those things.
So when you went to initiate that divorce, you walked into the lawyer's office and said,
I want a divorce now.
Okay.
I don't, Mike was content to let things go along as they were.
Okay.
Without being proactive about anything. And I decided that I wanted to take that step. It wasn't enough for me just to be separated. If Mike wasn't going to be an integral part of my life, then I didn't want him legally part of my life.
Did you feel you needed to do that in order to move on?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
I remember the day that my divorce papers arrived. In fact, actually, I wouldn't open mine for 3 days. I left them on the couch.
Did you really?
What was that experience
I
like
tore
for
mine
you?
open like it was Christmas.
You did. Very different. See, they're very, very different. I let mine sit on the couch for 3 days. Yeah.
I did a couple of woo-woos and smiled.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it is very different. Mine was very quiet. Very, very quiet.
I was excited. Because I didn't have, Amy's an adult, so I didn't have a child or anyone else other than me.
Right, and I was working and dealing with Sarah, so that was very, very different. So it is really very different and very unique, and we want to make sure the audience realizes that there are absolutely no two divorces that will ever be the same. And we do not want you to be under the impression whatsoever that any of it is easy. There's lighter moments. There's even some laughter during some of it now and then. There's a lot of yelling at the television and maybe other things and items in the house. But it is definitely a process. The next step, the next doors that you were looking at was the divorce itself, and then what have been the next step? Was that mortgage payment?
That was making my first mortgage payment.
Was it scary getting it refinanced and doing that whole process?
That was because I had never owned a house by myself before.
Okay.
And for the most part, Mike had taken care of. We refinanced once or twice during that time period, but he pretty much did that. I just signed the papers. So these are all decisions that I had to make for myself.
What kind? How
I
long?
kind of liked it, yeah.
So you actually found that kind of exciting.
I did. It was challenging, trying to understand all that legal jargon. But that was exciting.
Did you really understand it? Because I don't think
Oh,
I
heck
totally,
no.
I don't think I ever did. I asked the attorney to,
I just knew what I had to pay every month.
There you go. And so then moving that piece forward.
Yes.
Since that time, your daughter has actually gotten married.
Yes. Oh, yes. She's living in the South, and right in the Outer Banks, where they do get some hurricanes, so that's a little scary. She's married to a man who's in the Coast Guard. So, and his time is up. His 5 years is actually up. So now they are looking for other work. She's a DJ on the radio, has her own radio show. So where they go may determine where I go.
And now you're in a different position to maybe make some of those choices. You and Mike were divorced when Amy was married, or were you still in the process of that divorce?
The divorce was not final.
It was not final, so you were still going through, the papers had not arrived. Can we talk with the audience a little bit about the children again and how we manage ourselves during the process of a divorce when there's important events for them and it's not about us? Okay.
Absolutely. Mike and I were together for all the plans for the wedding. We met wherever the reception was going to be, where the church was. He was part of that planning process. I thought it important that Amy know that he was part of that process. So whether he wanted to or not, he was part of that process. Not that he fought me on it, but I made sure that it was the three of us and her fiance at the time to keep those connections together. We were together at the wedding. We both walked her down the aisle. So there was never a time that Amy would feel that she was not loved by both of us.
And that was the main focus. And I was at that wedding, and that's exactly what I saw. It was quite a beautiful wedding, quite a beautiful event. As in the dating scene, would you be willing to share a little bit with our audience what the experience was like when you first started dating and then when you saw Mike first starting dating?
I mean, when Mike started dating?
When he started to date, what that was like for you, as well as when you actually started dating yourself, what that part was like for you.
Well, Mike actually didn't stop dating.
Okay.
So that wasn't anything new for me.
Okay.
It was difficult for me in that I was apprehensive. I had a lot of insecurities that I had been carrying for several years. Was I enough still? And it was the internet dating. I met, some very nice gentlemen, but nothing that I really wanted to pursue.
Is part of that where you were within your own head in stage of relationships, and then part about interests?
Yes.
Yeah. So a little bit of both, because I know that as I was going through mine, I waited for a while before I started dating, and then when I did, my head probably was still a little swarmy, and thank you. It wasn't anything about them. I was just where I was at.
Well, I have actually met someone very special.
I know,
in
which
the
is
interim.
interesting.
We met through his daughter-in-law, who was a student teacher of mine 10 years ago. And we have stayed in touch. The daughter-in-law and I have stayed in touch. And she introduced me to her father-in-law, who was a widower. And we hit it off. We had so many things in common. Retired athletic director. We know a lot of the same people. We have dealt with a lot of the same situations in athletics and education. And he's a wonderful man.
When you and I started talking about doing this show, we talked about really inviting people in the audience to hear about experiences of divorce. And again, there's a whole range of kinds of divorces you can have. And we were just starting with these sets. We also were talking about you dating. You were dating Jim at that time,
Yes.
and you were starting to date him, and that was kind of moving forward. One of the things I remember you and I talking about is during the divorce, really thinking that there would be not so much a life after the marriage. There was more of a sadness and loss of hope at times. And the beaming that's happened to you now has helped me to see you moving, as we talked about, moving through the divorce, that transition. Can you speak a little bit to as we get ready to wrap up our show, a little bit about that sadness and the moving into the light again, so to speak?
Again, having the support of my friends, Patty and Sharon meant everything to me in different ways. They have seen a difference in me as I have moved on. And my mother has also. She said, I didn't realize you were unhappy before, but seeing you now, the difference is remarkable.
Did you realize that you and most likely Mike were really that unhappy?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
I didn't because, again, I thought that he loved me. So if it was a downtime for us, I thought, well, we would come back up again. But, you know, the past few years of our marriage was a lot of down and not so much up. So I was sad, but I didn't realize how sad I was until it was all over, and I look back and I think about how I reacted to things, how I didn't do things I might have wanted to do. I neglected myself.
And then there was a conversation we had sitting up on your porch, and we were talking about staying tight and holding on and being hopeful. And I remember that conversation. Do you remember that conversation?
A little bit.
Yes. And so tell me about moving into the hope and carrying your own hope today, and the word that you would give to other folks who are going through divorces. What would really be that message you would want them to know?
I think that every individual has to give themselves time to recover, time to feel better, time to get involved in other activities, time to allow yourself to look in the mirror and say, I am enough, but not too much time. There comes a point when you have to say, enough is enough, and I need to go forward. And again, having friends that say, I don't want to hear you whining anymore, is helpful. So it's, as everybody is different, but I think time is the big factor. You take the time that you need to feel better, and then you move on. You pick up other interests, you start talking to people, you join a club, you take a class, audit something at a college, or in Sharon's case, she talked with a counselor quite in depth. It's something that I did not do, only on an informal basis. Thank you, Gwen.
You're welcome.
But as everybody's needs are different, I think they have to approach things differently. But just a positive outlook. And I'm generally a positive person anyway. But allowing yourself to be that positive person that you know is inside.
I would like to deeply express my gratitude and thank you. This is such a tender topic for both of us and many people. And I'd like to thank our viewing audience for joining us and staying tuned. We look forward to seeing you soon. If you'd like some contact information, Pam is an email address that she can offer you, as well as if you have ideas or suggestions that you would like to see presented on this show, feel free to contact me at the information that you see on the show. On that note, have a great day, and thank you very much. Thank you, love.